So if you want to build a modern web app, and I mean really build it, from a completely blank folder all the way to a live application on the web, in the next few minutes, that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll focus on the fast, modern tools that developers are using right now to make it simple and quick. Let's get started.
Okay, first things first, you gotta pick your tools. For a long time, everyone used Create React App, and it was great, but it could get really slow, especially as your project got bigger. The new way, and the way we're doing it, is with Vite. It's a total game changer because your development server starts up almost instantly and stays fast, no matter how huge your app gets. It just means a lot less waiting around and a lot more coding.
All right, let's dive in and get our hands dirty. The first step in any developer's journey is just setting up the project, right? Getting all those initial files in place. With Vite, this is so streamlined, you're going to be shocked. In fact, we'll be up and running with a live development server in just 3 simple commands.
These 3 lines are going to do all the heavy lifting for us. That first command, npm create Vite, it scaffolds out the entire project, all the folders and files we need for a React app. Then, we just move into that new folder and run npm install. That downloads all the little bits of code our project needs to run. And finally, npm run dev. That kicks off the development server. And that's it, we're ready.
And boom, just like that, your brand new React application is running live in your browser. Vite has spun up a local server for you, and you can see your app immediately. This instant feedback loop is exactly why developers love using modern tools like this.
Okay, so we've got an app running. That's awesome. But let's be honest, it doesn't really do anything yet. It's just a static page. Now comes the really fun part, making it interactive. We're going to dive into the core building blocks of React to actually bring our app to life.
And this brings us to a really fundamental question. You see, a React component is basically just a function. And functions, well, they have terrible memories. A function runs, it does its job, and then it forgets everything that just happened. So how in the world do we give it a memory? How can it remember a number that's supposed to be counting up or what a user typed into a box?
Well, the answer is a special React tool called a hook. And the first one you got to know is useState. The concept is actually really simple. You call this function and give it a starting value. In return, it gives you back 2 things. First, the current value, and second, a special function that's the only way you're allowed to update that value. It's the standard go-to way to give your components their own little memory.
Okay, so useState is for memory. Got it. But what about, actions? Things that need to happen outside of the normal flow of just drawing things on the screen. I'm talking about things people call side effects, like fetching data from a server, setting up some kind of subscription, or even just changing the title of the browser tab. Where did those kinds of things go?
For that, we've got another hook, useEffect. Think of this as your do something after the component shows up on screen tool. But the real key here is that second part, the dependency array. It's that little array at the end. You put variables in there and you're telling React, hey, only run this effect again if one of these specific things changes. It's how you get precise control over when your actions happen.
And listen, this is super important, especially if you're new to React. If you forget that dependency array, oh boy, your effect will run after every single render. So imagine your effect updates some state. Well, updating state causes a re-render, which runs your effect again, which updates the state again, and you've just created an infinite loop that will crash your app. Always be explicit with your dependencies.
So far, all of our focus has been on what's happening inside one single component. But real apps are made of lots of components, and they all have to work together as a team. So the next big question is, how do we make them talk to each other?
Yeah, this is a classic problem every developer runs into. Imagine you have a list of users, and right next to it, a details panel. They're siblings in the component tree. When you click a user in the list, how does the details panel know which user to display? They can't just talk to each other directly.
The main way that information moves around in React is through something called props. The easiest way to think about it is this: data only flows one way, downhill. A parent component passes props down to a child component, kind of like passing arguments into a function. It's a one-way street, and the child can only read the props, it can never change them.
And this right here is the elegant solution to that problem. It's a pattern called lifting state up. Instead of having 2 siblings, each trying to manage their own piece of the puzzle, we find their closest common parent and we lift the state up to that parent. The parent now owns the state, becoming the single source of truth. It then passes that state down to both children as props, and it also passes down functions so the children can tell the parent when something needs to change. This way, everybody stays perfectly in sync.
All right, check this out. We've built an interactive app with multiple components that all work together. It's great, but it only works on our own machine. And that's not very useful, is it? The whole point is to share our work with the world. So let's get to the final and honestly the most exciting step, deployment.
One of the easiest ways to get your app online for free is with GitHub Pages. The process is really straightforward. First, you run a build command, which takes all your code and squishes it into a super optimized little package. Then, after a couple of quick configuration steps, like installing a helper package and adding a script, you just run one command to deploy. And just like that, your app is live on the web for anyone to see.
Now, GitHub Pages is fantastic for getting started, but when you're ready to level up, the modern web has even more powerful options. You have platforms like Vercel and Netlify that are basically built for this. You just connect them to your code repository, and they will automatically build and deploy your site every single time you make a change. It's an unbelievably smooth workflow, and they're great options for any project you have.
So let's just take a second and recap the journey we just took. We started with Vite to guarantee a fast, modern development workflow. We used React hooks, uState, and uEffect to give our components a memory and the ability to perform actions. We learned the proper way to structure communication between components by lifting state up. And finally, we completed the whole cycle by deploying our app for the world to see. These really are the core pillars of modern React development.
By following these steps, you have literally gone through the entire life cycle of a modern web application, from an empty folder all the way to a live, functioning site. You now have the fundamental building blocks for creating much more complex and powerful applications. So the only question left is, what are you going to build next?